Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the December 14, 2015 City Council Successor Agency to the Redevelopment Agency meeting. Would you please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Are there any changes to the order of the agenda?
No changes from staff this evening, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Next is council communications. Why don't we start with Mark?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just have two items tonight. One is I had been following for some time some work and an ordinance that had been adopted down in Sunnyvale a year or so ago. I believe it was Sunnyvale. That looked to impose, I'll call them additional controls on ammunition, particularly high-capacity magazine ammunition. And it's been wending its way through the courts. And long story short, there was some interesting work by the Supreme Court, or announcement by the Supreme Court of the United States on a similar ordinance earlier this week. And I have asked staff to provide some briefing materials for me on that. Not that I think that this is a particular risk in San Carlos, but I'm sure the people in Sandy Hook felt the same way about their community as well, and it's something that I want to be aware of. And I mention it just in case there's anybody else who wants to be privy to that information when Greg finishes doing it. The second thing I wanted to mention is I think we've probably all gotten word from a number of members of the community, particularly living up on Crestview Drive, about a number of residential burglaries that seem to have a similar modus operandi that have taken place up there. I've talked to the chief about it. My understanding, as of a few days ago anyway, was that the total number of burglaries in the community doesn't seem to be particularly out of line with historical standards. But I do think this is something, given some of the concern voiced by community members, that we ought to have the chief come back and report to us on sooner rather than later, rather than at his next scheduled meeting. And so I'd like to ask the council that we ask staff to have the chief come at a future meeting and make a presentation to us on this situation and about the trend on residential burglaries in general.
Agreement? Yep. Okay. All right. Is that it?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Sorry, I forgot to say that.
Didn't want to cut you off. Bob.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A couple things. I attended the Redwood City and also the San Mateo reorganizations that were held last week. New mayors were selected in both cities. Also attended the Silicon Valley Clean Water monthly meeting where we had a presentation on long-range financial planning and how we're going to basically end up paying for the new sewer plant and all the attendant items that have to go with that. They're looking to basically not fully automate, because that would be impossible, but I'd say 75% automate the plant by 2019 and basically have one shift instead of 3 shifts, which is good. They also outlined the costs, which of course climb as we go along, but in a fairly reasonable way, and also how we were going to be funding that. And we're going to be funding it basically through state funds that are available to be borrowed at very low interest rates. And so that will help us keep the costs down to all the folks that have to pay sewer charges. Sort of piggybacking on my colleague's comments up at Crestview, since I live on Crestview, a number of people contacted me also about the burglaries up there. There was a neighborhood watch meeting that was held last week. Or should I say a meeting that was held to make sure that we could start, if not already have started, a neighborhood watch program. And I know the chief has sent some more patrols in that area just to make sure that if there are folks up there. And in fact, today one of my neighbors indicated that a couple of folks made a phone call. They saw some folks wandering around that just didn't seem, just sort of wandering. And so they made some phone calls, and I don't know what the result of that was, but the point is everybody's got to be vigilant, whether it's on Crestview or down in White Oaks or wherever it is. The east side, the same thing. Everyone just has to be vigilant to their property. And the last thing I have is, I know Vice Mayor Johnson is one of the leaders of this Peninsula Clean Energy, a community choice for renewable energy for San Mateo County. And this week in the San Francisco Chronicle, there was an editorial. It was on this item. And basically what it was is it was about PG&E charging an exit fee. And I guess the exit fee has increased from $6.70 to $13 per month if you want to exit PG&E. And not that I didn't expect this was going to be happening, I just didn't think that PG&E was going to be rolling over and going, that's okay, you can take all these people in San Francisco and San Mateo and Sonoma and all these counties and just take them away from us. So anyway, everyone I think should be aware of the fact that this is going to the PUC and hopefully even higher if it has to the legislature to make sure that this is done reasonably and isn't some interesting formula that's been set up. And that's all I have.
All right. Thanks, Bob. Matt?
Nothing to report.
Cameron?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll just briefly comment on, Bob, that editorial. So this is in reference to a program that's going to be coming before the City Council, the first meeting in January, where the county is establishing a cleaner energy alternative to PG&E where residents can opt out. The County Board of Supervisors has already voted to form the JPA, and now the question is, do cities want to join it? And I've been participating on the steering committee. So I think the point you bring up, I think, really is PG&E trying to shift the economics about whether or not such a thing is economically viable. The county is weighing in with the PUC. I think it would be a reasonable thing, should we decide to join the JPA, that we also consider weighing in as well. So I appreciate you bringing that up. I just have two transportation-related items that I want to bring up. So I serve as the South County representative to the San Mateo County Transportation Authority. We had a meeting earlier this month. The most relevant thing is that we discussed the shuttle program. The TA funds 26 shuttles throughout the county. A lot of them connect Caltrain to businesses and residents. There's one shuttle in San Carlos that's funded by the TA, and that's the one that goes from the Caltrain station to Electronic Arts. But generally, the feedback is the TA is looking to have a more effective shuttle program. Some of the shuttles are not cost-effective and are frankly pretty empty. And generally, the shuttle program is undersubscribed. So we should be thinking about, are there opportunities to create more shuttle linkages in San Carlos, because there's potentially a pot of money to fund it. And then Mark and I have been working with a couple residents about on a plan to reinstate an old bus line that no longer exists in San Carlos that was called the 46B, and it would go up the hill to Crestview, come down the hill, go to downtown, and then out towards Carlmont and Tierra Linda. I had a meeting with two residents who've been working on this project and at Samtrans with the head of operations at Samtrans, and I'm happy to report that Samtrans is viewing this proposal very favorably, and we're planning to have a follow-up meeting with operations and planning in January, potentially to go to the board sometime in the middle of the year. And that's all I have for tonight.
Great. Thanks, Cameron. I just have a couple things. I also represent San Carlos on the Housing and Endowment and Regional Trust, and we had a meeting last week. We're trying to pick a new executive director for that organization. And also, the very next day, I attended the San Mateo County Affordable Housing Task Force. Not enough sleep. And the Affordable Housing Task Force was put together by a couple of San Mateo County supervisors, Don Horsley and Warren Slocum, and it features representatives of every city in the county and many people who work for those cities. And we are trying to work collaboratively to come up with ways to address the critical housing shortage in San Mateo County. And we made a little bit of progress, but every one of these meetings I go to, which happen monthly, by the way, it reminds you that it's a very daunting daunting challenge when you have very little land and you have a lot of people that need housing. For every one tech job that is created, there's usually 3 or 4 service jobs that are created for that, and those people are having to drive further and further distances to get to their jobs. San Mateo County's housing shortage is a lot more critical than some other counties. Santa Clara County has a little bit more room than we do, and so it's one of the challenges that we're going to be facing over the next few years and probably beyond. And that's all I have. Any comments by staff on city administrative business?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a couple. First, on behalf of the staff, I'd like to wish everybody a happy and safe holiday season and a happy new year to you all. Thanks for coming out tonight. I did want to talk a little bit about the residential burglaries that have been reported up on Crestview and pass on some information that I've received from the chief and some conversations that have taken place out of town right now, so he couldn't be here tonight. In looking at the residential burglary statistics for the community, they have not changed at all over the last several years. We average about 2 burglaries a month, and some months we have no burglaries at all, or we'll go several months without burglaries. That's not to say that we accept that as the status quo. The police department is working. They've increased patrols in the area. As you know, since joining the Sheriff's Department, instead of having no detectives, we have about 23 detectives that we have access to through the Shared Services Detective Bureau. They're working the case and following up on leads. The police department's planning to do a number of public safety outreach meetings next year on a whole host of topics, including cyberbullying, which they've been doing in the schools, and extending that to the community, residential burglaries, how to protect your home, all those kinds of the CERT program, where citizens get involved in emergency preparedness for the community. So we'll be offering all those outreach opportunities to the community in the coming year. I'll schedule the chief to come to our next meeting to present the residential burglary statistics to the council, which is something that seems to come up at least about once a year when we do have these occurrences. So rest assured that the police department is aware of the issue. They're working on it, and the chief would like me to remind everybody to please lock your doors and windows. Many of these burglaries that are reported in town are actually auto burglaries, and more often than not, the cars are unlocked. And a laptop or some sort of valuable electronic device is visible from one of the windows, which is attracting somebody for a crime opportunity. So please be vigilant, and the police department and city will do the same.
Thanks, Jeff. Greg, I saw your light on. Did you have anything you wanted to contribute?
I think it's just the default it was on. Sorry.
Okay. All right. Thank you. All right. Moving on to item 5. We're going to present a proclamation tonight to Sam Hertzberg in recognition for his constructive advocacy on the behalf of the San Carlos East Side community. Sam, if you could come on up, I'll meet you up by the podium. I met Sam about more than 4 years ago when I was running for council, and it was one of the gatherings over on the East Side when East Side Connect was being finalized. And throughout the time that I've known him, I've just found him to be one of the people in this town that is very interested in what goes on, and he participates. He's one of the most reasonable people I've ever dealt with. We've had lunch together. We've disagreed on stuff. We've talked about a lot of things, but I've always found him to be engaging and intelligent, and it's a credit to this city that we have people in this town that care what goes on and cares about their neighborhood and cares about the future of the town. And we thought it was very appropriate tonight to recognize Sam for his contributions. And so, Sam, I want to just read one little part of this. I don't want to bore everybody with all the details, but the one part of this that I think is so accurate is, whereas Sam Hertzberg dedicated significant time and effort over more than a decade bringing the issues of East Side residents to the attention of the city and the city council. And one of the things he's done is he's been involved in just about every project that has any impact on the east side, and we always get a very personal perspective from him, but it's always presented in a way that is sensitive to the position of everybody in the city and the residents, and he has the unique ability to put things in perspective. And I just want to say, Sam, I really treasure that, and I value it, and congratulations.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Thank you very much for the recognition. I appreciate that. I moved to the neighborhood, to the San Carlos 18 years ago, and it's amazing how time goes by. My 5-month-old now is 18 years old, and my 15-year-old wasn't born yet. But my neighborhood was a neighborhood in transition. There's a lot of changes happening around it, and I want to be part of making sure that those transitions were thoughtfully carried out. And I appreciate the City Council and the Planning Commission listening, and it's an open process in trying to advocate for your community and trying to represent a lot of people, as you know, as elected officials, on some potentially controversial projects, but a great deal of progress has been made, and I appreciate the recognition tonight. Thank you very much.
Through the chair, may I add just a brief comment?
Absolutely.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You don't need to get back up, Sam. It's okay. I just wanted to echo what Ron said, Sam, and not only do I very much appreciate the fact that you and I have shared a lot of opinions where we share things in common and where we don't, and we respectfully disagree and we move on and try and address them. But one of the other things that I've always admired about you, and I try to remember to do it myself as well as a result, is that you do not always assume when we're dealing with public issues that any one of us, yourself included, knows the entirety of the picture. And you recognize that, you know, we're all like people, that old joke about the committee in the room feeling the elephant, trying to figure out what it actually is with their eyes closed. And I really admire that about you. I think that that's a hallmark of good citizenship, is to make your points of view known, have your concerns, push hard for them, but also all the time recognize that none of us knows the entirety of the picture. So thank you for all you've done, and I look forward to seeing you around town in the future.
Thanks, Mark. Bob?
It's going to sound like we're posting you up for, you know, sainthood or something here, but you know, I guess I met you close to 10 years ago because I've been involved in this job doing this rather, and you know, Mark said it way more eloquently than I could, but you know, it's to me it's a common sense thing, and every time I talk to you, and we probably disagreed 75% of the time or more, but it was always, you know, sort of treat someone as you would like to be treated, and that's what I always felt when I was sitting with you. And you know, I don't think you can ask for anything more than that with anybody. So like I said, it's just it's well deserved. Please be active somewhere, somehow, in the next whatever millennium, because we're going to need folks like you to help us out on this. Thanks.
Thanks, Bob. Cameron?
Yeah, I just want to echo my colleague Sam. It's been great working with you. I definitely want to reiterate that, you know, I think you set a good model for everybody about how to advocate, but doing so in, you know, a respectful, thoughtful way, and getting people to listen to you. It's been very effective with me, and I hope you stay involved, and I wish you well.
All right. Congratulations again, Sam. Okay, we're going to move on to public comment. Persons wishing to address the City Council on matters not on the posted agenda may do so at this time. Each speaker is limited to 2 minutes. If the item you're speaking on is not listed on the agenda, please be advised that the City Council may briefly respond to statements made or questions posed as allowed under the Brown Act. The City Council's general policy is to refer items to the staff for attention or have the matter placed on a future agenda for more comprehensive action or a report and a formal discussion and input at that time. And I only have one speaker slip. And where's the other one? Okay. Well, we'll start with Laura, since I'm holding hers. Laura Fanucci.
Good evening, Mayor Collins, members of the council and city staff. I'm Laura Fanucci from HIP Housing, tonight here to present you with HIP Housing's 2016 calendar. We didn't have a winner from San Carlos this year, but we had 12 spectacular winners who entered beautiful pictures about their home and then wrote a beautiful statement about what their home means to them. I'll go straight to December's winner, where she says, this is a second grader, "I have the freedom to do whatever I want. Home is relaxing and playful. I can watch TV. You can sleep in your home bed. I feel safe, peaceful, and happy at home." So as you know, we use these calendars as an outreach tool to educate the community about our affordable housing programs, especially our home sharing program, which matches people who have housing here in the community, empty bedrooms, willing to rent out to people who are looking for housing. On the last page of the calendar this year, we did do a full page ad about our need for more home providers for our home sharing program. It's a unique way to provide affordable housing here in our community. We have over 400 people who are actively seeking a place to live through this program right now. And so if people have individuals who know that have rooms for rent, we would certainly welcome the chance to talk with them. They can visit our website at hiphousing.org. We're certainly thankful for the support you've provided for all of our programs, for helping us find a place to call home for people in our community. I wish you all happy holidays, and I hope you enjoy the calendars throughout the year. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Laura. All right, we did have another speaker. Want to come on up? Great, thank you. All right. Jonathan Chan.
Yeah, so I think I emailed most of the city council members. Me and my wife, we live over in the Crestview neighborhood. We moved over to San Carlos about a year ago, back in November of 2014. Little did I know that I would be, standing up here in front of you guys speaking, because, historically I've been, and me and my wife have been fairly silent with regards to public service and following, governance. So we had a robbery at our house on December 2nd. That was, pretty shocking. I've emailed most of you guys, and I received some really good feedback, and I appreciate your responses. I appreciate that you guys will be reaching out to get an update on the statistics for the neighborhood. And I think from a city council perspective, statistics is always a fairly, generic way of analyzing, the data of what's actually going on in the community. In addition to analyzing the statistics and understanding whether we have spikes with regards to crimes and home burglaries, I think it'd also be important for us to understand what additional technologies we can utilize as a city to help us fight these types of crimes. Since the December 2nd burglary, we've been essentially thrown off our feet, essentially trying to fortify our homes, install security cameras, install security systems. I have 3 different camera systems going on right now until I get the full security outside of our house. The investment, I feel like, will not only give us peace of mind, but also hopefully we can help our neighbors if there's a similar situation that happens to be able to observe additional footage. We've joined Nextdoor recently, and the outreach with our neighbors has been really good. It's sort of nice and comforting in some manners to understand that you're not alone going through these types of situations. So my main ask for the city council is, in addition to the statistics, take a step back from the statistics, and is there a way for us to get to a point of what other technologies can we utilize, what other additional services are out there that we can leverage to hopefully get to a point where we don't have to deal with these types of situations in our community. So thank you.
Great. Thank you, Jonathan. All right. Is there anybody else that'd like to speak? Thank you. Andrew Taylor.
Yeah, good evening, Council. I have my concern about what's going on in Crestview as well. I'm glad that people have reached out and you guys are at least aware of it. I think the comments about just locking doors and 2 a month is a little bit misplaced if that's the interpretation of what's really happening in San Carlos today. You look at Crestview, there have been, I think, 5 now since Thanksgiving, and these are not a case of unlocked doors, or these are actually where sliding glass doors are being physically smashed, broken into. My wife who works in IT, she has a home office and fortunately spends a lot of her time in home. walks our Jack Russell twice a day, and we just don't see, anecdotally, we don't see the police presence that we used to see up on Crestview, especially for the speed. We don't even see that anymore. So I do have concern about the police, or at least our perception of what the level of police presence is up in the area these days. On a second note, I would like to refer to a letter that I got from City Attorney Rubens in response to our group's request regarding release of redacted emails, which were provided on a list from Yvette Hall on an email that I got on October 16th. Mr. Rubens has referred to the fact that only counsel can, his estimation, we've had a lawyer look at it and respectfully disagrees with his opinion about being it under attorney-client privilege. But tonight we would like to formally request that if the city wants to avoid litigation, that the emails, Mr. Rubens has indicated that it would be up to City Council to waive attorney-client privilege on the redacted emails that we've received. And so I'd like to request, I don't know who I need to give it to, that City Council consider formally to waive the attorney-client privilege request and that we get copies of those emails in their totality. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. Mike, come on up. Thanks.
Thank you, Council. My name is Michael Stogner, and I'm a private victims advocate, and I live in San Carlos. And I just wanted to bring something to the city's attention, and that is that since we turned our police department over to the sheriff's department, we don't quite have the same service that we used to have, and we don't quite know how to compare it. But I want to talk about a law enforcement officer that we used to have that was on duty, and he left San Carlos's patrol 3 to 4 different times. He went to Redwood City. He stalked a woman and her friend. He threatened her in public in his uniform, and he was representing San Carlos at that time. After his shift ended at 6 in the morning, he met with his complete team that he patrolled our city with at a local bar. He had 2 hard drinks with his superior. After that, he drove to Redwood City and beat the crap out of the woman's boyfriend. He went to trial. He was convicted. He possibly should have spent up to 10 years in prison. He got tremendous favored treatment, which is another thing that sometimes law enforcement gets, and sometimes it's not really favorable. And I know there's nothing you can do about that. I can just let you know I have personally met with the 2 victims, and I was very disappointed to find out that nobody from San Carlos ever called them to say, wow, we're so sorry for what happened. The one gentleman, I believe, has over $58,000 hospital bills. Nobody offered him a way to not be traumatized and help him with his bills and help him stay on his feet to go through a court process. The good news is there's going to be a new trial finally, March 7th of this year. But I really think that if somebody, at least from the city, could have offered, hey, we're so sorry this happened, and the guy's no longer employed, he's not one of our sheriff people. But I think that was one of the differences that I was trying to work on, is the fact that when we had our own police department, we would never tolerate that kind of behavior. And now, as it turns out, we have law enforcement, which is great, but we have no say-so over how they work. So anyhow, also, I can tell you this, that when a law enforcement officer gets, quote, favorable treatment and doesn't honor a restraining order and doesn't have to go to anger management, sometimes we're not doing him a favor. And we lost a very good sheriff deputy to self-inflicted wound. And he was given favorable treatment of nobody was reporting the domestic violence calls that were being called, and that is a violation of San Mateo County protocol. So I just wish that you guys could get connected a little bit with these victims and at least let them know you're sorry. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mike. All right. Is there anyone else who would like to speak? All right. Next item is approval of the consent calendar. These are items that are considered to be routine and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion on these items unless members of the council, staff, or public request specific items to be removed for separate action.
Mr. Mayor, I move approval.
Second.
All right. Motion and approval of the consent calendar. Yvette?
Mr. Mayor,
Oh,
we
I'm sorry.
have two ordinances on the consent calendar.
Oh, we have to read those, don't we?
Thank you, Mr. Rubens. So I move that we adopt Ordinance 1496, an ordinance of the City of San Carlos City Council adopting a zoning district map amendment for the property located at 191 Lemoore Drive, APN 051-161-100, to a designation of RS6, single family. Also, that we adopt Ordinance 1497, an ordinance of the City of San Carlos adopting amendments to the San Carlos zoning ordinance, Title 18 of the San Carlos Municipal Code, Chapter 18.22, signs, consisting of corrections, clarifications, and minor improvements.
All right.
Councilmember Grisilli?
Yes.
Councilmember Grocott?
Yes.
Councilmember Johnson?
Yes.
Councilmember Olbert?
Yes.
Mayor Collins?
Yes. All right. Next item is item 8A, public hearing. This is a consideration of adopting a resolution denying an appeal of an administrative citation in code enforcement. Case number COD 2013-00065 at 2 Cranfield Avenue, APN 049-071-090, pursuant to Municipal Code Section 1.25.040. Mr. Zave.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, members of the City Council. As noted, this is a consideration of denying an appeal for some inoperable vehicles at 2 Cranfield. And Chris Valley, our building official, oversees the code enforcement efforts here. And so he'll briefly walk you through this. And then we also have Patricia Camacho to answer any questions, and she's our code enforcement officer. Chris?
Thank you all. Good evening, Honorable Mayor, members of Council. As Mr. Savay stated, this is a consideration of adopting a resolution to deny the appeal brought forth by Mr. Riley Russell, owner of 2 Cranfield Avenue. In a nutshell, the code enforcement case associated with the appeal involves the abatement of 3 non-operable vehicles currently stored at Mr. Russell's property. And I should note this case was brought forth to staff's attention by a San Carlos resident. My staff report gives a fairly detailed synopsis of the timeline and the activity by Code Enforcement Officer Patty Camacho since 2013. Since the report was written, however, another $500 citation has been issued, so the current citation amount stands at $1,300. Both Patty Camacho and I can answer any questions, and I do assume that Mr. Russell is in the audience to answer any questions as well.
All right. We have any questions of Mr. Valley?
I do. So, Mr. Valley, it's somewhere in here, and I'm not sure where, if I read it in the appendix, or that you indicated, or Ms. Camacho indicated, that all these vehicles were not registered?
They were, yeah, they're non-operable. In other words, they have either they're not running or they're not registered. And I believe, Patty, they're not registered, correct?
No, they're not registered. Yeah. Okay, thank you.
All right. Any other questions? Okay. Anybody else that's going to be speaking on this?
I was assuming that Mr. Russell was in the audience. Okay, great.
I'd like to raise several points.
Yeah, come on up.
First, the vehicles. I'd like to know which 3 vehicles they are because the citations refer to 2 vehicles. In 2013, I removed one of the vehicles. The other vehicles are operative. They are licensed and they are insured. So I'm a little confused to that. In 2013, I wrote to the city clerk requesting an appeal of the citations that had been issued. And I received it on August 9, 2013. I received a letter to acknowledge that I had actually appealed my case and that they were looking into my claim and they would be getting back to me shortly. I never heard anything ever again from the city clerk. I would like to contest the question of notice to this body. I did receive notice last week. The code requires 10 days. I don't know whether that's from mailing or from whether there's a proof of service involved. I'd like to be able to give an opportunity to show the
vehicles are licensed and operative. They are. And so that leaves me with a few other questions and issues, but I'd like to object on a couple of matters. One, the lack of notice. Second, I'd like to address the city's failure to reply, and then the fundamental misapplication of the law, in my opinion. The law requires that the citations that have been issued quote sections of the law that simply don't apply. Then they tell me what the fix is, and it's not even stated in certain of the sections of the law. So I don't know what I'm supposed to apply or not apply, and I've been waiting for the city to respond to my 2013 petition and answer for appeal. So I feel this is somewhat unfair. I'd like to have an opportunity to be heard correctly, and I'd like to also understand the application of the law as it's being held, because it seems to be read simply that a car can't be placed in the driveway. The determination is by the city on whether it's an operative or not. These cars are not operative. There's two vehicles. There's a Argosy. It's 20 foot long. It's licensed. It's insured. Doesn't move all that often. It's moved once a year. My daughter takes it to Burning Man or for a drive. And the other vehicle that I assume, I don't know what the other vehicle was. It was an old English car in the first that was referred to, and I have moved it. The position is that it has to be in an enclosed garage. That's not how the code reads. The code reads it has to be not in an enclosed garage. It has to be in an enclosed garage if it's sitting in public view. So, I think that the application of the law is being stretched here. I think the notice to myself is being stretched here. And the fact that the city is not even responding to my 2013 appeal really bothers me, and that's really why I'm here.
All right. Thank you. Mark, did you want to you have a question
Yeah,
for Mr. Riley? Mr. Russell?
Sorry. No, actually, they were for staff.
Okay.
But thank you.
Thank you.
Excuse me, I asked a question, Mr. Russell. No, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, it's fine.
Rather than have him come back up.
Yeah, I didn't want him to have to go bouncing back and forth. So, to me, it's a little confusing. Ms. Camacho says they're not registered. You say...
Well, I don't think they have to be registered, number one.
Okay, well, wait a minute.
Let's look at the code.
Excuse me, sir.
Yeah.
I was trying to ask a question. You said they were registered.
Yes.
You said they were registered. Yes. Are they or are they not?
Yeah, well, I'm not sure what vehicle she's referring to. Okay. Number one, the Argosy...
Are any of the vehicles in the front yard or wherever they are registered?
Yes.
Are all of them registered?
One of them doesn't have to be.
One of them doesn't have to be.
The boat doesn't have to be. In your opinion? No, it's law.
Sir, I'm just asking the question, okay? Please, It has
a lifetime trailer.
Okay.
You register it once and it's...
As I understand and reading this report, you do not live at 2 Cranfield.
I do not.
Okay. Is it a rental or what is it?
Father lives there.
Okay. All right. So you're not necessarily, do you go down there every day or?
Go down there often.
Often enough to know what's going on?
Yes.
Okay, fine. Thank you.
All right. You had a question of staff, Mark?
Yes.
You can go ahead and sit down if you like.
Thank you. My question for, I'm not sure if it's for Chris or I apologize for Patty, I think was the name. What mechanism or approach did staff use to determine that the vehicles were not registered? And I suppose related to that, if we could clarify which vehicles we're talking about as not being registered. So.
Good night. There is a motorhome which is parked on the corner, is not registered. That was verified by a CSO in the Sheriff's Department. And there was previously 2 vehicles which were located also on the corner side yard property, which were relocated to the rear property. Therefore, because before they were relocated, we did obtain the license plate numbers. Those were as well verified by the police department to be not registered. And then there is the boat that is on the other side of the property as well.
Thank you.
If the trailer doesn't have to be registered, it has to be operable, which means that it has to be in good conditions. It has flat tires, which makes it inoperative.
Okay, thank you. My other question is a more general question, I believe, for Mr. Rubens, and that is any input that you'd like to give the council on the way in which the ordinances are being interpreted here?
Well, I think what you're being asked tonight is to consider the appeal of the applicant. The citations that were issued were under Chapter 8 of the code, and you hear staff testifying and the code enforcement officer testifying that the vehicles are inoperative. I think part of their finding of inoperability is that some of the vehicles at least are not registered, and I think staff said that they are not registered, and that goes to the operability of them. You can't operate them on a public street. So I think those are the findings that you are reviewing, and the citation that have been issued, you'd be upholding them if you denied the appeal, and if you upheld the appeal, those citations would be dismissed effectively.
Thank you.
Okay, Matt?
One of the things I'm a little confused about, just because, you know, when you get your own auto registration, there's a thing on there where you can mark that you're not operating the vehicle and therefore you don't have to register it. And my understanding was you're fine doing that so long as it's not in the public right of way. If it's in your own driveway, it's on your own property, then you can keep a vehicle and not have it registered, you know, the license plate up to date and so forth. So I'm a little confused on what the issue is.
That is true, that someone can request to basically declare that the vehicle is a non-op vehicle and pay a much lesser registration fee and not get issued the tags. But our ordinance is separate from the state law that allows you not to pay the full registration fee. Our law is designed to deal with accumulations of abandoned vehicles and inoperable vehicles on property. So I think they're two different things. The DMV, I could construct some other hypotheticals, because if I have a non-operable vehicle, according to our code, it has to be in the garage, not in the public right-of-way or public view.
So I've got two more questions. One, I don't know if it's right to mix this up or not, but I've commented to city staff a number of times about a property on Magnolia where there are 4 vehicles that just sit there, 3 of them in the public right-of-way and 1 in the driveway. The 3 in the public right-of-way, the owner, whoever it is, tends to keep them registered, you know, current registration. There have been times where I've even reported to the city that the tags are not current, and I guess the guy has been given a notice to get them current. There's another one, a green older model vehicle that sits in the driveway and it's not registered and it doesn't move. And yet when I've told the city about that, I've been told the city's hands are tied, there's nothing they can do, and nothing gets done. And those vehicles all sit there on that property or in front of that property, virtually going nowhere. So I'm wondering about the application of the law and being fair with the law. In one case, we've got this situation that I've made the city staff aware of on Magnolia, and then we've got this gentleman who's being, in my view, being treated differently.
Go ahead, Jeff.
I'm going to respond a little bit just because I have some personal experience in this area from 20 plus years ago in another city where I worked in code enforcement on this particular issue. Our ordinance essentially is what you could consider to be a junk car ordinance. So bifurcating the issues of registration, where you can non-op your vehicle to get a reduced registration, basically telling the state you're not driving the vehicle. The difference with our ordinance is your vehicle has to be in operating condition. If it's not in operating condition, it has to be stored in the garage. So if the vehicle has flat tires or doesn't run, it couldn't be in a public area or seen from a public area or even backyards. That's the way that it works. But typically, if somebody receives a notice from the city, and as you know, our code enforcement in San Carlos is primarily based on resident complaints. So obviously in this case we got a complaint from a neighbor and the city investigates. So if there's a straight registration issue, that's usually up to the owner to take care of. But if it's a question about whether or not the vehicle's operative, you'd schedule an appointment. The city would come out and you would demonstrate that the tires are inflated and the vehicle starts and runs and stops real quick, and then it can be parked. In other words, it may be an ugly vehicle, but it is an operating vehicle, and the blinkers work and the lights work and all those kinds of things. But if it's missing headlights and it's missing tires and it has flat tires and clearly can't operate, then it falls into the junk car category and it would need to be stored in a garage.
Follow-up question, and then I have one more question to ask. So you're saying if a vehicle can be demonstrated as operable, it's not an issue, but couldn't there be a situation where a person registers a vehicle as operable, but it's not? And it still sits there in front of a home on a public right-of-way, 364 days a year, which seems to be the case. The situation on Magnolia that I've, again, made staff aware of, the vehicles sit there and are virtually unmoved. They are registered, but does that, I guess, so my question is, does the fact that you register a vehicle then leave the assumption that it's operable?
No, it doesn't. You can have a registered vehicle that's still a junk car, non-operable vehicle. I think we're aware of the cars that you're talking about, and that fellow plays the hokey pokey with the police department, moving his cars around, which in and of itself suggests that they're operable because he does move them, particularly when he's feeling pressure from the police department to do so.
So then my last question is to this gentleman's assertion, anyways, that he appealed but then never heard from the city on his appeal. So what can we be updated on what that situation is, or how that could be the case?
Mr. Grocott, I'll make an attempt at answering that. It was back in 2013. The building division did not receive the appeal. I believe, as Mr. Russell stated, it did go to the city clerk's office. Why it didn't get to council at that point in time, I don't have the answer to that. Essentially, the case got rebooted a few months ago. So there's a litany of code enforcement activity since that time, since we started this up again this year. And again, for whatever reason, I don't have the answer why the appeal wasn't brought to council at that time.
Go through the mayor.
Why don't you? I'm sorry, Mr. Russell. Can you hold up? Can you hold on a minute? We've got a couple other questions by council members, and then you'll have an opportunity. Cameron.
Thanks. I wanted to ask about that sort of 2-year time gap. So the initial investigation was based on a resident complaint?
Yes, it was.
Now, the one that started, so then it says in the staff report that the $100 fine was waived, and I assume that was just due to inaction. Was there any specific finding, or it was just?
I'm going to ask that Patty address that. Do you have an answer for that, Patty? Okay.
When the appeal in 2013 was brought to our attention, I was told to hold off until further. And sometimes what happens with some of these cases, we put them on hold, and then when we are researching our caseload, this one came up again, and I brought it to Chris's attention, and we started working on it again. I went and I did a field inspection. You can see the car, the motor home, the boat that's on the trailer with the flat tire, and the two vehicles that are behind the fence. You can see them as you drive by. Mm-hmm. So that's how.
Let me just then ask, so you said it got restarted. Was there a subsequent complaint that came in from a neighbor, or was it just that it
was
popped to the top of the pile and we decided to take a drive out and to see if it was still a problem?
Yes, that's exactly what happened. Going through cases and following up, this came up as an open case, so we took it from there. I went out there and I did an inspection, and we need to close a case, we need to prove that the violation is not there. And so I went and I did an inspection. The violation was still existing, so that's why I said a notice of violation versus a citation. We started the process over because of the time lapse.
Okay. And last question, what would the gentleman have to do to be in compliance?
He would have to, any vehicle that is not currently registered or not in operative conditions needs to be relocated inside the garage or an enclosed structure, which would be the garage. And any other vehicle, for example, the motorhome or any vehicle that is registered needs to be parked on a driveway versus stored on a side yard.
Okay, thank you.
Bob?
I have a question on the notice. I don't know whether Chris or Patty. When you send a notice, and it says here, notice was sent by regular mail, where was it sent? Did it send it to the name on the registration? Because Mr. Russell says he doesn't live there, so I can see all. I'm sorry. I thought that's what you said. You said your father lived there. You.
Not where they sent it. I don't live at 2 Cranfield. I do live where they sent the mail.
Okay. All right. So anyway, where did you send the mail?
It was sent to the Ascension Drive address, which is where I believe Mr. Russell resides.
Okay, and he indicated he didn't even know that he didn't get that notice.
I said I didn't get it within the 10 days required by.
Okay, fine. All right. Let me ask a question to the city attorney. So there's $1,300 here. Can we make a finding that it's half, it's 10%, it's 20%? Take a number?
The code is pretty clear on what the fines are for these types of violations. I'm just going to step back just on the notice issue first and answer that one. The code just requires that the notice be mailed. Does not require that the person receive the notice. That's clear in our code. So on the fine, I think the way this is structured is the first citation from 2013 is not really before you. That's not part of this action. What you have is the 3 citations, one for $100, one for $200, and the third one for $500. The last citation for $500 is also not before you because each citation is a separate violation.
Okay, so in effect,
if the council and the way it's a progressive fining, so you have 3. So if you upheld the appeal partially, you would need to do it by. You couldn't make the findings on one of the 3 citations. That's how you would have to.
So it's 800 then, 100, 200, 500. Yeah. That's all that we're talking about.
And let me just take a quick look at the code to see if you have some discretion to reduce the fines. I think that might be the gist of your question.
Mr. Mayor?
I'm looking at code section 1.20.020, which is the fines, and the progressive fines are worded as fines not exceeding for each of the violations. So technically, you do have discretion to reduce some of the fines for each of the violations.
Okay, thank you.
All right. I've got a couple of questions, Chris or Patty, whoever wants to answer them. So there was a fine that was waived 2 years ago.
Correct. The initial $100 citation was waived, right. Exactly, because we initially restarted everything.
And this just sat dormant for 2 years? And was it because there was a backlog of
Yes,
cases?
exactly. Yeah, it was put to the back burner for whatever reason. We had other priority cases that we had to address. Patty drove by, discovered, hey, this still is in its current state as it was in 2013 for the most part. And so we moved forward on it. It got moved to the front burner.
Did it look this year the way it looked 2 years ago?
With the exception, the RV, I believe, is still out front. I think Patty could probably better describe the actual site conditions. But, the main point is we do still have inoperable vehicles at that residence, 3 of them.
2 of the inoperative vehicles, as I stated before, that were parked on the corner side of the property have been relocated to the rear of the yard, of the fence, behind the fence. It's not actually a rear yard. But
So a side yard?
Yes, they are still there, and like I said, I had CSO run the registration. They are in operative conditions. The boat is on a trailer which has flat tires. There is gallons of oil sitting by the trailer as well. That's the conditions of the.
Right. So if he were to bring everything in compliance now, what would he need to do? Get the tires inflated, remove the cars to the backyard?
For the boat, he would need to inflate the tires and relocate it onto the driveway. Right now it's sitting on unpaved surface on the side yard. He would need to put it in the driveway or in the garage. Any vehicle that is not currently registered or in operative conditions need to go inside the garage, and any vehicles that are running and operative need to be on the driveway.
Have there been any neighbor complaints?
Not recently.
Not
No.
recently.
Oh, and as well, the oil. You cannot have gallons of oil sitting in your front yard on.
So there are containers of oil in the front yard today?
Yes.
All right, so that needs to be gone.
Yes.
All right. And forgive me, I'm not familiar with this business of having a vehicle on the side yard versus a backyard. The fact that he has a fence around it on the side yard is not good enough or doesn't meet the code?
No, the code. There's a code section that is actually for outdoor storage.
Mm-hmm.
That code reads that you cannot have any goods, material, vehicles stored on a property versus parked in a driveway or stored inside a garage. You cannot have them stored in the yard.
Okay. All right. I want to ask a question of Mr. Russell. Why don't you come back up because we're being recorded and we're on TV. So do you understand what the issues are and what the violations are? And
Yes, but this is why I appealed. I wanted to get a clarification because I don't believe the code is accurately read that it has to be in a garage. Absolutely, I believe that if it's in a garage, if it's in out of a public view, if you read the code, it has an "and" in it. So that implies that if it's out of the public, can't be seen from the public view, that if it's behind fences, that you can store a car. Now, I also disagree with their categorization of how they categorize it as inoperative. So, and that's exactly why I appealed in the first instance. Yeah, if you go back and look at my letters, that's what I was trying to find out. I wanted to find this out. And when I wrote the appeal in this case, and by the way, the code requires that an appeal be brought to this body within 10 to 60 days. It's not a question of whether you can just postpone it for convenience. So you postpone this for 2 years while I'm waiting for a ruling. I don't want to talk to with all due respect to the officer because I want an understanding of what the code really says. What is the law that applies here? Because I don't believe she's interpreting it correctly. That's why I came to appeal. I wanted to find out. If I move the motorhome, which is the property is an odd property. It's a triangular shape. So technically, it's not in the rear yard. It's on, it's very strange. So the question is, if I move it back behind the fence, is it okay? Under her interpretation, no. But I don't believe that. So also, what's a driveway? Because it's an entrance into the property with a gate.
Right. I understand there are things in dispute here. Yeah. But do you agree that there's containers of oil in the front yard?
That I don't know. I'd have to check.
Okay.
That would be something my father did.
There's flat tires on the...
There's one flat tire, I believe, on the trailer, but, it needs to put some air in it. I just haven't had a chance. And the reason I haven't had a chance, if you'd like to know, I can give you, but I don't really think it's relevant.
All right. Thank you. Thank you.
Well, I do want to address the body that I had a right to get an appeal in 2013. The code is very specific, 10 to 60 days.
Fee was waived, right?
I was never told the fee was waived. Nothing was ever sent to me about the fee. Nothing at all. And there was more than one violation sent, so I had no idea what the rules were. Then when I got the new citations, again, referencing two vehicles, unclear, citing sections of the law that I really don't believe apply. And I believe that it's my right to be able to understand and have these people. You have to weigh it against the code. You can't just arbitrarily say, this is,
All right.
that's the way it is.
Thank you. I think
Trying to get my due
you've
process.
explained it adequately. Mark?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Question for Greg, just the interaction that we were just hearing. My sense was that the original citation from a couple of years ago was my terms, essentially canceled, waived, whatever one wishes to call it. And so timelines driven off of that, really the only thing that's before us is, from a timeline point of view, is timelines driven off of the most recent set of citations, which began a few months ago. I just want to understand whether that's a correct interpretation.
That is correct. As was pointed out, appeals of this type have to be heard within between the 10 days and 60 days from the notice of the appeal. And since that didn't happen, that citation had to be abandoned by the city. We didn't have any authority to continue with that citation once the appeal period expired and there had been no hearing. And I did want to correct something from earlier that's related to the penalties. The code requires that an appeal be brought within a certain amount of time, but if you look at the timeline here, the appeal that's before you tonight is only as to the third citation. The first two citations that were not appealed, just the third one was appealed, the one for $500.
Okay. I don't see any lights on. Matt?
Just one more question. So the notice of appeal, case number 13, so forth, 00065, that would indicate that is the citation from 2013?
And I don't know how the citations are numbered, but that first one, there's no jurisdiction to consider an appeal of the first citation because we didn't hear an appeal within the time frame that we were required under our code. So what you have before you tonight really is the third of the second set of citations from 2015. The first two did not have an appeal that was made.
Is there anything else you wanted to ask, Matt?
No.
Okay. Well, this is a public hearing. If there's anybody who wishes to speak on this, please come forward. All right. I see none.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we close the public hearing.
I second.
Okay. You bet.
Councilmember Grisilli?
Yes.
Councilmember Grocott?
Yes.
Councilmember Johnson?
Yes.
Councilmember Olbert?
Yes.
Mayor Collins?
Yes. All right. Well, we need a motion before we discuss.
Mr. Mayor, through the chair. May I ask a question of Mr. Rubens based on that last interaction that he was having? So, Greg, does that mean that the motion, if one were to make a motion, we would have to modify the code enforcement case number here because it is in fact referring to COD 2013-00065?
I think the clarification is that it's a case number, so it's not really the citation number, so I don't think you have to correct.
Oh, I see. The case can still be filed under that number. It's just the citation that's driving it is more recent.
That's correct.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay. Well, anybody want to make a motion here?
Well, I'll take a shot at this. I mean, there's a lot of ambiguity on all sides of this to me,
right.
And it's very complicated.
I think we have to start with a motion, then we can do
right.
what we're going to do.
I'm just prefacing my motion. I mean, I'm always one to try to do the middle here. So I'm going to make a motion that we. I don't know what the wording is, though. I'm trying to change these numbers, so I don't know how the dollar amounts. So you're talking about 100, 200, and 500. And my motion is going to be to waive the $500, but in other words, to have that go away, but have the $100 and $200 ones be in effect.
And I may not have been entirely clear. I do not think the $100 and $200 fines are at issue tonight in the appeal because they were not separately appealed. Only the third one was appealed, the one for $500. Okay. So you could, if this was your intention, reduce the fine on the third one,
But in theory, he's still liable for the first two.
That's right.
Okay.
That's
So
right.
I'm going to make the motion then to approve, or what's the term I want to use here? Uphold the appeal, then, I guess. I'll make the motion to uphold the appeal on the $500, but I'm going to say that he owes the other $300. Now, if he doesn't pay it, what happens?
Well, in this case, there is another citation that came later. I don't know what the timing of the need to appeal that citation is, but if you did that, you would be upholding the appeal. You could also have the option of substantially reducing, denying the appeal, but substantially reducing the fine on the citation that's
And again,
before you.
I asked the question, assuming that we deny or uphold the appeal, he has amounts of 100 and 200 against him already.
Right, that's correct.
What happens? What is the collection process? How does that get collected? How does it work? So against his property, does he, get thrown in debtor's prison? How does it work?
We do not have that last alternative, but generally what we've done is we've filed notices and do not actively pursue the fines. We just get paid when a property changes hands or when someone refinances it.
So basically, you put it against the property at 2 Cranfield.
That's right.
And so it's a lien.
That's right.
That $300 would be a lien. Okay.
Yes.
All right. Oh, jeez.
Okay. Well,
I don't hear a second, so I didn't get anywhere with that one. So.
Understood what you
Yeah,
No, I'm not sure either, but
yeah.
I mean, I was trying to identify. I'm trying to identify the situation of trying to split the amounts, but it sounds like it's not collectible to begin with.
Can I make a suggestion?
Sure.
Through the chair. And
make a motion, too.
you can rule me out of order, but I'm inclined to uphold the appeal. The reason being, there appears to have been a clerical error. There also appears to have been no specific resident complaint. I do believe there's a code violation here, but there's a significant amount of ambiguity that I don't feel like I have sufficient facts to be able to do it. I do think if we get an additional complaint, that we should send code enforcement out and we should issue a citation. But given the amount of ambiguity in this case, I'm inclined to uphold the appeal, and so therefore to take no action.
Well, I sort of concur. I'm trying to split the
Yeah,
amount.
I know you are.
So I'll make the motion to uphold the appeal, and then the other $300 is up to the city to put the lien on the property or whatever if it's not paid. How long does he have to pay that $300?
What we do is we do follow-up letters first, and then if we don't get a response, then we have
60 days or something
We'd
like
have
that?
to provide notice of the lien and then record. Yeah, it'd be something like 60 days. I have to say, this is a very rare occurrence.
I understand.
And
Okay,
so,
but my motion is to uphold the appeal. It doesn't have anything to do with the other $300 because that's going to happen anyway, or whatever. So anyway, my motion is to uphold the appeal.
Second.
Okay.
all right, we have a motion and a second. Matt, your light is on.
My light's on because the word, I'll launch off that word ambiguity that's been used twice now. I do think there's a lot of ambiguity here, including in the staff report, because what we don't have is we don't have a copy of the code that we can read and make an interpretation of. We don't have photos that show us what these violations look like. So we have no idea what the gravity of the situation is, either from 2013 or today. And I also think, I agree that there's this ambiguity about why he didn't hear from the city back originally. And I also think in the application of the fines, I'm picking up that the rest of the council feels the way that I do, that I don't know which fine applies to which vehicle or which citation. So that's also ambiguity. And I think if staff's going to bring us these kinds of things, these kind of situations, which do occur and they do need to be corrected, this is the kind of information we need in order to, because we're essentially sitting as judges here, and we need information in front of us in order to make a judgment call. Lastly, I think could be, it seems to me, some miscommunication that's going on between this gentleman and the city, and I think that's unfortunate. So I think there needs to be an effort by city staff and this gentleman to sit down and look at these things together, because it's one thing to get a piece of mail that says you've violated this code, and then you're expected to read it or take it to a lawyer to read, versus actually sitting down face to face with somebody and saying, this is what the situation is, and seeing if there's not. It sounds to me like there's a way to work at least some of this out. So that's my view of the whole thing.
Mark?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A couple of comments. First off, regarding how to interpret the code, I don't know about anybody else. I actually went and read the code before the meeting, because it seemed like a reasonable thing to do, and I frankly concur with the interpretation that staff has made of the code. The other thing that I would point out is the reason I asked Greg one of those later questions. To my knowledge, the only thing that's at issue here are the recent citations. And I don't see, the only ambiguity that I've heard people refer to seems to refer to the 2013 citation, which in fact, as Greg explained, is no longer in play. So any ambiguity related to that is not ambiguity at all, because it's not relevant. And finally, the last comment I want to make is I just want the council to be a little careful about precedents that we set. There's a basic principle in the law, which was described to me once by a judge when I was making an appeal to him of a traffic ticket many, many years ago. Ignorance of the law is not a defense, and it can't be. The reason it can't be is because then what would happen is people would just say, well, I didn't know about that, and they'd get off. There is a responsibility to make sure that you understand what's going on. When things are brought to your attention in particular, you have to follow up on them. I'm going to be voting against the motion that Bob and Cameron have made, and those are the reasons why. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Well, before we vote, Mr. Russell, you've certainly gotten our attention, and I think we've gotten your attention. And the only reason I'm going to vote to uphold the appeal is because the order of events and the inconsistencies are difficult to defend from our point. But I want a commitment from you that you're going to work with staff and clean up whatever the issues are, work through them, because we can't have blighted property, and if we don't enforce our codes, why have them? So,
Don't disagree with that.
Okay.
I'm happy to do that, but I would like to know specifically.
I'm sure they'll tell you.
Yeah, I'm sure you.
I'm not also saying that they're getting the right interpretation. I'd like to have that, at least.
Well, we want. I think what we're saying here is we want resolution. We understand your point, but I think you need to work with staff and get this matter resolved, because I don't think any of us want to see this come back. Okay, we're ready. Yvette?
Councilmember Grisilli?
Yes.
Councilmember Grocott?
Yes.
Councilmember Johnson?
Yes.
Councilmember Olbert?
No.
Mayor Collins?
Yes.
And I'd like to announce the resolution number for this, which is 133. Thank you.
133. Okay. All right, next item, also public hearing, item 8B, consideration of 120-day extension of urgency ordinance number 1498 pursuant to Government Code Section 65858A, imposing interim zoning on formula businesses in the historic downtown core area, 1,100 and 1,200 blocks of San Carlos Avenue, and 600, 700, and 800 blocks of Laurel Street, requiring a conditional use permit for new formula businesses.
Good evening once again, Honorable Mayor, members of the City Council. As you recall, on November 23rd, the City Council adopted a 45-day urgency to require new formula businesses in the downtown to get a conditional use permit. Tonight we're here before you to get an extension on that time for 120 days, and that would allow us time to do community outreach and engagement and draft up the ordinance, take it to the Planning Commission, maybe to the Economic Development Advisory Commission for advice, and then research some other things that were discussed at that last meeting. So with that, that's what we're asking you to do this evening, is adopt a 120-day extension. And if we can get it done faster than 120 days, we will certainly do that. Thank you.
Okay. Any questions of Al? I don't see any. All right. This is
Mayor,
also I'm sorry?
I was going to make a motion, but
well,
you have to ask for public hearing.
Public hearing. Anybody would like to speak on this issue? I don't have any speaker cards. Okay.
Mr. Mayor, I move to close the public hearing.
Second.
All right. Yvette?
Councilmember Grisilli?
Yes.
Councilmember Grocott?
Yes.
Councilmember Johnson?
Yes.
Councilmember Olbert?
Yes.
Mayor Collins?
Yes.
And Mr. Mayor, I move to adopt ordinance number
1499.
1499, a 120-day extension of the urgency ordinance number 1498 pursuant to Government Code Section 65858A, imposing interim zoning on, quote, formula businesses in the historic downtown core area, the 1100 and 1200 blocks of San Carlos Avenue, the 600, 700, and 800 blocks of Laurel Street, requiring a conditional use permit for new formula businesses.
Second.
All right. Motion and second. Any discussion? Seeing none. Yvette?
Councilmember Grisilli?
Yes.
Councilmember Grocott?
Yes.
Councilmember Johnson?
Yes.
Councilmember Olbert?
Yes.
Mayor Collins?
Yes. Okay. On to item 9. Reorganization of the City Council. Yvette, the item A says that you're going to announce the results of the municipal election held November 3rd, 2015. Please do so.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. I would like to declare the results of the municipal election held November 3rd, 2015. The election was held for the purpose of electing 2 council members to the full terms of 4 years, 1 city treasurer to the full term of 4 years, and to vote on Measure V. The results of the election, as reported by Mark Church, San Mateo County Chief Elections Officer, are as follows. For the office of City Council, Ron Collins, 5,394 votes. Mark Olbert, 5,114 votes. Andrew Schenk, 426 votes. Therefore, Ron Collins and Mark Olbert received the highest number of votes for the office of City Council. For the office of City Treasurer, Michael Galvin, 5,794 votes. Therefore, Michael Galvin received the highest number of votes for the office of City Treasurer. For Measure V, 3,834 votes yes, 5,874 votes no. Therefore, Measure V did not pass. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Yvette. I think the next thing we need to do is adopt a resolution to accept certificates of the Chief Elections Officer and statement of vote cast in the Consolidated Municipal School and Special District all mail-in ballot election held November 3rd, 2015.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to move to adopt Resolution 2015-134, a resolution of the City Council of the City of San Carlos accepting the certificates of the Chief Elections Officer and the statement of the vote cast in the Consolidated Municipal School and Special District all-mail ballot election held November 3rd, 2015.
I second.
All right. Any discussion? Yvette?
Councilmember Grisilli?
Yes.
Councilmember Grocott?
Yes.
Councilmember Johnson?
Yes.
Councilmember Olbert?
Yes.
Mayor Collins?
Yes. All right. The next item is comments by any council members post-election. I'm not seeing any. I guess we're being quiet. All right. The next, city clerk to administer the oath of office to newly elected city council members and city treasurer.
That's you.
Do you want us to come down there, or one by
Yes,
one?
please.
Okay.
Treasurer Galvin, if you'd like to approach the podium. Thanks.
Come on.
Yes, we can do that. Treasurer Galvin, would you like to be first? Okay. If you would please raise your right hand. Do you, Michael Galvin, do solemnly affirm that you will support and defend the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that you will bear true faith and allegiance to the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California, that you take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, and that you will well and faithfully discharge the duties upon which you are about to enter?
I do.
Could please sign. Congratulations. Thank you. Councilmember Olbert, would you like to come up? If you would please raise your right hand. Do you, Mark Olbert, solemnly affirm that you will support and defend the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that you will bear true faith and allegiance to the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California, that you take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, and that you will well and faithfully discharge the duties upon which you are about to enter?
I most certainly do and will.
You can please sign at the bottom. Here's your certificate. Congratulations. If you could please raise your right hand. Do you, Ron Collins, solemnly affirm that you will support and defend the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that you will bear true faith and allegiance to the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California, that you take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, and that you will well and faithfully discharge the duties upon which you are about to enter?
I do.
If you could please sign. Here's your certificate. Congratulations.
Okay. We are at the point now where we are going to entertain comments by our newly elected or re-elected city treasurer. Do you care to make any comments, Mr. Galvin? You're welcome.
Thank you. I'd like to thank the community for electing me to serve another term as elected city treasurer. I appreciate the opportunity to continue serving the community, and I'll do my utmost and my best for the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Mr. Olbert.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll just be brief. I, too, am honored beyond words by the fact that the community has once again been willing to allow me to make decisions on its behalf. This is a journey that I started quite a few years ago by joining the school board, being elected to the school board. There have been a lot of things that have happened along the way. I will have to say that they've always been very interesting. I look forward to another 4 years, and I very much appreciate, as I said, the community's support and willingness to have me make decisions on its behalf. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. I'll try to keep my remarks brief, but I do want to say thank you to the community for returning me. It is an honor, it's a privilege to serve on this council, and let alone just even being mayor, but I have to tell you, it's been a lot of fun, and I never imagined that would happen, but it's, who would have thought that you grow up in a town and you become the mayor? So it's as I said, it's a great honor and I've really enjoyed it. Council members in other cities tell me that they envy us and that they wish they had our community, our downtown, our city management, and our council sometimes, even our weather. So I think it's very it's very much appreciated that, and I never forget that when thinking about living here. It was an accident that I moved here. I didn't choose to live here, unlike the other council members. My parents brought me here, so it wasn't my choice, but I'm glad they made the choice. We did a lot this last year. I'm not going to go through all of the accomplishments, but we did launch Shape San Carlos, launched Inform San Carlos. I got the opportunity to attend a pipeline conference in Philadelphia on the mayor's pipeline safety program that was started by, it was called the Mayor's Council on Pipeline Safety, which was started by Jim Ruane, the mayor of San Bruno. We finally got PG&E to start working on inspecting and testing line 147. One of the highlights of the year was dedicating Frank Harrington Park on Laurel Street, and I miss Frank every day. I wish I could see him on Laurel Street, but I think he would be very much in agreement that naming the park in his name or for him was an appropriate thing to do. The other thing I'd like to say is that when you sit on the council and you go to meetings, you get to kind of sit back and let the meeting come to you, but when you're mayor, you have to actually run the meeting. You don't have any more power, but you have to run the meeting. And it requires that you pay a lot of attention. It also requires that you interact with staff a lot more than you normally would. And, when you think of this city as a business, we have a $48 million budget, $40 million in annual revenue, over 70 employees, 29,000 customers. A company that has that kind of revenue and customer base has to be on its toes, and I think the staff of this town does a great job from all the way at the top. It takes strong, intelligent leadership to be a CEO. It takes legal counsel that understands municipal law and the challenges and how municipalities are different from the corporate world. And we have that. We have department heads that they not only have a depth of knowledge, but they listen and they work well with us. They give us the information that we need, and we are very fortunate to have that. And I might have mentioned before that in this town, we've had 3 city managers in 28 years. 3. And that's not always true of a lot of cities. A lot of cities have had turmoil and gone through it, and it hasn't been fun. We've been very fortunate in this town to have some solid leadership over the last 28 years. Finally, I'd like to thank the very first person I really need to thank is my wife, because she's been with me for 40 years. I don't know how you do it, but she doesn't see me half the time. Let me put it this way, sometimes I can't live with myself, but she manages. Again, I have a deep appreciation for my fellow staff members, employees of this town, many of which have been here a long time, and they could take lower paying job or higher paying jobs rather in private industry, but they stay here and they do a good job, and we are better for it. And I said the other day at a staff luncheon that nobody really notices when a city is well run, but they notice when a city is poorly run. And I'm very happy that we have a city that is well run. And finally, to the residents, we ultimately work for you. You are our bosses, and we don't always get it right, but I think our hearts are in the right place. And we were all elected to serve you, and we very much appreciate it. Okay, at this point, I'm going to call for nominations for mayor.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to nominate Cameron Johnson for mayor for 2016.
Second.
All right, there's a motion and a second to nominate Cameron Johnson. Yvette?
Do they need to close the nominations?
Oh, do we need?
Yes, you need to close nominations, please.
Oh, all right.
I move, Mr. Mayor, I move we close nominations.
All right, and we need a second and a vote on that?
I don't.
Sorry, I do this once.
You can make an announcement if there are no other nominations. We're going to proceed to the vote.
If there's no other nominations, we'll close the nomination process. All right, that works? Okay.
Thank you. Councilmember Grisilli?
Yes.
Councilmember Grocott?
Yes.
Councilmember Johnson?
Yes.
Councilmember Olbert?
Yes.
Mayor Collins?
Yes.
Cameron.
That's right. He is. Can't forget.
You could please raise your right hand. Do you, Cameron Johnson, solemnly affirm that you will support and defend the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that you will bear true faith and allegiance to the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California, that you take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, and that you will well and faithfully discharge the duties upon which you are about to enter?
I do.
Sign at the bottom. Thank you. Congratulations.
Boy, how quickly they forget.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. I'm going to save my comments till the end, and let's move on. Do we have any nominations for Vice Mayor?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to nominate Matt Grocott for Vice Mayor.
A second's not required for nomination, so.
Are there any other nominations?
If I may, I would like to turn down the nomination. As you all know, I'm going through health issues right now, and I just don't think it would serve the community the best to serve as vice mayor. There are times where the person in the role of vice mayor is asked to run the meeting because the mayor's got something going on. I know Cameron works in the corporate world and once in a while gets, called on a trip or, things like that. It's happened to him as both as vice mayor and as a council member. So there are probabilities that, that could happen. And with what's going on in my life right now, at least for the next couple of months, that would be a difficult situation if we ran into that situation. So for that reason, I think it'd probably be better if Bob were nominated as the vice mayor, and I'd be happy to serve as vice mayor, when Bob is mayor. So that would be fine with me. So,
Matt, I certainly want to respect your personal wishes. Let me bounce one other thought off of you, which is that if this is something a council can do, which I think we can do in the role of vice mayor, is to have you as vice mayor, and if you are, for whatever reason, for some short period of time, unable to serve as vice mayor, then we have Bob do it.
Well, there's...
And if you don't want to do that either, that's fine.
Yeah, well, there's that old adage of, KISS, keep it simple. Not that I shouldn't say that because it might come out wrong, but, the old KISS thing. I think it'd be better just to keep it simple, allow Bob to serve as vice mayor. Bob and I have kind of been through this before because there was a situation where we had a council member resign, and then I was vice mayor at the time, and so I served as mayor the balance of that seat. And then when it came time where I normally would have served as mayor, there was confusion, and what we ended up doing was taking the full, I think it was 18 months, and we kind of split the baby and said, all right, I'll go for 9 months, and Bob can take the other 9. So Bob and I have been through this complexity dance before, and I would rather not do it again, so just keep things simple, if you don't mind.
Well, Matt, I'll just say, I think that's very gracious and magnanimous of you, and, all of us wish you a speedy recovery, and I know for the next, couple months you're going to be really focused on that. Are there any other nominations for Vice Mayor?
Then, Mr. Mayor, I will nominate Bob Grisilli as vice mayor.
And do you need a second for that?
No.
We don't.
We
Okay.
don't need a second. Are there any other nominations? All right, hearing none, let's move forward with the vote. Yvette?
Councilmember Collins?
Yes.
Councilmember Grisilli?
Yes.
Councilmember Grocott?
Yes.
Councilmember Olbert?
Yes.
Mayor Johnson?
Yes.
you could please raise your right hand. Do you, Bob Grisilli, solemnly affirm that you will support and defend the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that you will bear true faith and allegiance to the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California, that you take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, and that you will well and faithfully discharge the duties upon which you are about to enter?
I do.
Thank you. Congratulations. You're welcome.
Congratulations, Bob.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
And now we move on to comments from the mayor and council members. Are there any comments?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, if the council will indulge me for a minute, I have some brief comments to make for former Mayor Collins, who, if he wouldn't mind joining me down at the podium.
Oh. This is dangerous.
No, it's nothing dangerous. No such luck. So, Ron, yes, it's been an interesting journey. It has so far together. It's been great. I did want to get you something to commemorate your time as mayor, and I thought long and hard about what that could be. And then, fortunately, one of the very last things you did on behalf of the city presented the perfect opportunity for me. So I have a plaque to present to you. So I'll show to everybody first. Oh. This was taken at the City Holiday of Lights ceremony when Mayor Collins actually successfully defended the city of San Carlos from the Grinch. And I will say, one of the things that really impressed me was that true to form, is one of the things I very much admire about you, is you didn't do it through raised voice or through anger or anything like that. You just calmly and reasonably talked to him, and he was okay with your proposal that he not steal Christmas. Yes, he was there. So I hope very much that you will treat this with all the respect that it deserves and serve as a memory of your time as mayor. Thank you.
Other comments?
Let Matt go.
So I just wanted to congratulate Ron on his past year as mayor. I think, as you stated today in the paper, that the biggest job is, and you repeated it, I think, tonight, that it's running this meeting and being a traffic cop with all of us and so forth. And it's not always an easy job. I think also, just representing the city, whether it's a Girl Scout function or a Chamber of Commerce function or over at Hiller or, shooting down the Grinch or whatever it is. Those are important functions as well. But primarily, the thing that I've appreciated about your time in this seat is just the fairness that you've offered to the public and to us as council members to be able to speak, get our points across, and so forth. So I've enjoyed the time that you've been the mayor and appreciate your service in that seat. So,
Bob?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First, I want to congratulate Mike Galvin for all his service. It's a lot of times people don't realize that not only does staff look at all the financial information that goes out and all the bills that are paid, but Mike also does look at them all and keeps track and is an independent eye to look at it all. And being a financial person, I really appreciate all the work you've done over the years, and thank you for serving again. I'd also like to congratulate Councilmember Olbert and now Councilmember Collins for being reelected and for putting your hat in the ring again to be able or want to serve this community and make it, as Ron said, one of the best in the peninsula. Lastly, I want to, or not lastly, I guess almost lastly, want to congratulate Mayor Collins for a good year. As my colleague, Mr. Grocott, indicated, I thought you did a great job of being a traffic cop, not only with us, which is the hardest part of it, and certainly fair to the folks out there that needed to speak and comment. You kept the meetings moving, and we got done what we needed to get done in a reasonable time. So, and again, you were very gracious and way more patient than some other members of the council up here. I won't say who.
The one talking?
The one talking, yeah. But anyway, so great job, Ron.
Thank you.
And again, both of you, thank you again for putting your hat in the ring and running again. Lastly, I want to, or again, next to last, I keep saying lastly, I want to speak to my colleague to my right, Mr. Grocott, who has decided, to take care of himself, which is, I think, something very important, and yet still be able to give back to the community when he can. And we're looking forward to seeing you come back hale and hearty. So looking forward to that. And now, lastly, congratulate Mayor Johnson, and looking forward to working with you this year. And anytime that you need anything done, just call Jeff Maltby. No, seriously, I'm looking forward to working with you, Cameron. And like I said, anything that we can work out together, I'd happy to do it.
Likewise. Thanks, Bob.
Mr. Mayor, may I add?
Yeah, absolutely. Mark?
Thank you. In addition to Ron wanting to recognize you with a plaque, let me also just echo my colleagues' comments that I think it's great that on behalf of the community that you were willing to run again and that you were reelected. You did a great job as mayor. I know that was your first time actually in that role, and I will say that you handled that very well. I had the opportunity of having run the school board for several times before I came to the council, and I was very impressed with the way you just took to it. So it was rather natural. I also would like to congratulate Mike Galvin as well on his reelection and continuing to serve the community, because that is often, as Bob said, often very unappreciated task and role. One other comment that I wanted to make relative to both the season of the year and also some of the events that have taken place on a larger stage in the United States recently. It occurred to me as I was getting ready to come to this reorganization meeting, San Carlos is unique, as we've talked about, as many have talked about tonight in many ways. One of the other ways that we were either unique or close to unique is had one of the very early instances of a council member who was Muslim, and who was a mayor and who was Muslim. And the important thing about that is that, in fact, it didn't matter at all to the community because the religious beliefs of individuals, provided they take their oath of office seriously, are completely irrelevant to the job of government. And I think that given some of the current thinking and current fears in the United States, perhaps other people ought to take a look at communities like San Carlos and recognize that there is a role and a way for all of us to work together, regardless of what our beliefs are. And then lastly, I too want to extend my congratulations to Mayor Johnson. I'm going to remind myself each time I say mayor that it's Johnson, not Collins. It may take me a week or two, but fortunately I have a few weeks before the next meeting, and I look very much forward to working with you, and I look forward to an exciting year.
Ron?
Yeah, thanks, Cameron. I also want to extend my congratulations to Mike Galvin. You've always done a great job, and it's glad to see you continue on. And I want to thank Mark and Bob and Matt for your very kind words. One of the nice things about being on the mayor was that I had 3 former mayors surrounding me. And a reporter asked me last week if that was, if I had a problem with that. And I said, no. It's kind of comforting sometimes, because if I mess up, they're always there to remind me. So I got a lot of good advice and help and support. And now, Cameron, you've got 4 former mayors surrounding you. But I want to offer my congratulations. I think that our city will be well served. I think you're going to be a great representative. You got a beautiful family, and you're a smart guy. And I'm looking forward to see how well you do.
Thanks, Ron.
Okay.
Matt, did you want to make any comments? Your light's on.
Just to echo what the council has said about Mike and his willingness to run as treasurer and serve in that role. It's much appreciated. Cameron, congratulations on stepping up to mayorship, and look forward to the year. And regarding Bob being vice mayor, you guys just watch out, because you don't know what you're in for when he becomes mayor. Thanks. You're welcome.
I just want to make one last comment. Matt, I know you're going to be gone. I just want to personally wish you the best, and I know you're going to come out just fine, and we'll expect to see you back here.
Ditto.
Okay, any other comments? All right, I think it's speech time. I'd really like to thank everyone for joining us tonight for the reorganization of the San Carlos City Council. I also want to congratulate Mark and Ron and Mike Galvin on your reelection. I look forward to continuing to serve with you. I feel very grateful and honored tonight to be chosen to serve as mayor by my colleagues. I'm going to share a few thoughts with you. But first, I wanted to also recognize our outgoing mayor. Let me tell you what I love about Ron Collins. If you talk to Ron, he has a habit, and he said it tonight, of letting you know that he grew up here. And he and Gail have been part of this community their entire lives, and because of that, they've built incredibly strong ties and relationships with countless people across town. Usually when somebody has an issue with something in the city, Ron will raise his hand and say, well, I went to school with that guy, or I've known her since 1985. I think I'll stop in and, pay him a visit, or I'll give her a call. And I think that's the kind of elected official that you want, somebody who can cut right to the heart of the matter and solve things through a personal face-to-face conversation. Ron, as other members have said, he always looks for consensus, and he's served his city with dignity and on the principles of fairness and inclusiveness. And it also helps that he is an all-around great guy. So I hope you will join me again in thanking Ron for his service this past year. I also want to congratulate you, Bob, on being chosen to serve as vice mayor. This is your third go-round? I think so. Yeah, well. I always feel like I have a lot to learn from Bob. Whenever he talks about an issue, I always feel like he's seen this story before, and I always listen very closely. I respect his directness and his intolerance for nonsense that he displayed a little of tonight. But he combines that with a kindness and a deep affection for his fellow residents. So I look forward to working with you closely, and I will try to make sure that we get out on time. So thank you, Bob. So as most of you know, and if you didn't know, now you know, I have 2 young children that are causing a ruckus in the back. And over the past 5 years, I've had a chance to read a lot of bedtime stories. And occasionally when I read my kids a story, there will be the character of the mayor. And here's an example of this. This is from a book called Red Roger Saves the Day. And, always the kids are running off to go see the mayor, or, the mayor has canceled Halloween and they have to convince him to let the kids go trick-or-treating. And this is Mayor Miles here. And he's always dressed in a suit. He often has a top hat or a sash. He looks old-fashioned. He looks overly stuffy, overly pompous. He's this kind of strange, anachronistic, symbol of civic authority. But when I look at those books, what I realize and I reflect on is that even in 2015, the office of the mayor still holds a special symbolic power for Americans. As has been talked about tonight, as many of you probably know, the mayor doesn't enjoy any special legal authority. We essentially run the meetings. But I think the symbol of the mayor is still a very powerful one. And whoever holds that office becomes a spokesman for the city, and they're looked to put things in context for people, to provide an overarching vision. I define the essential function of the mayor as somebody who's supposed to engage with citizens, to be visible, to be present, to listen, and to share perspective. And that's what the focus of my term as mayor will be about. to be out in the community listening, sharing my perspective about the important trade-offs that face us in the coming years. As everyone is aware, we live in a time of immense change. And if I were to sum up the central focus of the city and the central challenge, it's this. It's to capture the opportunities that our growing economy and prosperity presents us without losing kind of who we are and what is core about San Carlos. So in order to do that, you have to know who we are. So I'm going to share 4 things that I think define San Carlos. So first and foremost, I think we'd all agree that we are a community. We're a community with strong ties, deep bonds that are forged through volunteer opportunities, soccer fields, schools, block parties, and millions of other interconnections. This is a city where it's very common to know your neighbors and where it's very common to run into your friends just walking downtown. Former Mayor Don Eaton has said to me on a couple occasions that the central job of a city council member is to build community. And I think he's right, and I take that to heart. In the city, we do that through supporting community organizations and events like Hometown Days, the Farmers Market, the Night of Holiday Lights, and many more. I'm proud that in the past year, we made it free to close your street to host a block party, and we even pick up the cost of insurance to try to encourage more people to get out and meet their neighbors. Second, we are a unique place with character and charm. We're not just another spot on the map. As much of our country continues to look more and more the same, we stand out for our uniqueness. Our downtown, with its assortment of locally owned businesses, become a regional draw. And all of us are working to protect that local character, and we understand how precious it is. Tonight, we took action to extend an ordinance that requires a conditional use permit for a new chain store to move downtown. We also intervened last year when there was talk of taking down the historic San Carlos sign, the Carlos Club sign. Third, we are caretakers and stewards of our city. We care about our community and we look after each other, especially the least fortunate among us. This can mean simple things like knowing the kids in your neighborhood and keeping an eye out for them, to volunteering to help the needy, or being stewards of our natural environment. Last year, to cite one example, when we had our historic drought in California, we reached out to the community and asked them to conserve water, and San Carlos residents cut their water by over 1/3. Finally, we are engaged citizens, and we're jointly participating in charting the future for our city and defining that future. We make our voices heard, but we're willing to listen to opposing viewpoints. Our politics are practical, they're solution-focused, they're not ideological. And in San Carlos, we believe it's possible to disagree without being disagreeable. Our city engages our citizens through community forums, through our newsletter, through social media, through direct community outreach. And last year, we launched a lot of new online tools to facilitate more community outreach. So to sum up, we've got a thriving community in a uniquely charming place filled with people who care about their city and give back, and governed by a city organization focused on solutions and community outreach. It should come as no surprise to anyone that people are lining up all around the country to move here. And as we've seen, our housing prices have skyrocketed in the last few years. And I think it's important just to take a moment, as we don't often do, to reflect on how fortunate we all are to live in San Carlos. And I want everyone to know that I recognize that very deeply, what an amazing place this city is to live and to raise a family. And we should all never take it for granted. So what's changing? So in my day job, I work for Netflix, and I see firsthand the change that's transforming our region and our city. And it has a nice name, and that's economic growth. These are two examples. This is the new Facebook campus that opened last year, and the new Apple campus that's being developed. In the past 12 months, I don't know if you know that this region led the United States in job growth. We added 47,000 new jobs in the last 12 months. And San Mateo County now has the lowest unemployment in the state of California at 3.2%. And this prosperity creates huge opportunities for our city, but it also creates real challenges. So let me start with the good stuff. The economic development means that our city revenue is up, and last year we ran a $2.5 million budget surplus. This money is going to go directly into improving our community with projects like rehabbing the playground at Highlands Park. Economic vitality, economic growth brings customers into our downtown, creates energy and vitality for our city. It also raises property values. It increases demand for development, which can upgrade unsightly buildings, underutilized properties, can help clean up contaminated sites. But our regional prosperity is creating real challenges for our residents. With more people, our infrastructure is stressed. There's more traffic on our roads. I don't know if you've noticed it's harder to find a place to park downtown. That parking demand bleeds into our neighborhoods and frustrates a lot of residents. Too much development can change the scale of our town and can alter the character. It can displace renters and locally owned businesses, and it can create a lot of disruption for people who live near it. And as everyone is very aware, rents continue to rise dramatically. And this can have real major impacts on families who've lived here for a long time. It also makes it more challenging for local businesses to find employees who can afford to live nearby. So one thing I've learned on my 2 years on the council is that our city is defined much more than how much tax revenue we bring in. At the end of the day, it's all about the community and people's feeling a connection to that community. And that's something that you can't put a price on. If we all collectively, the council and our community, make wise and thoughtful decisions, I believe that we can have the best of all worlds. We can maintain a thriving community in a city with unique local character, while at the same time having tons of resources to continually reinvest in our community. So over the next 12 months, I will be out in the community talking to all of you. I want to hear your ideas about how to navigate these trade-offs and how to continue to make San Carlos a great place. If you have ideas, please don't hesitate to reach out. So in closing, I'd like to thank a few people and recognize a few people who are here who are special in my life. First and foremost, I want to thank Jeff and the city staff. Thank you for your service to our city. It is often unseen and often unappreciated. But I want you to know that it's very much appreciated by me and by all of us. And I want to do everything that I can in the next 12 months to support you and your team's mission to provide great service to the city of San Carlos. I want to thank my colleagues, again, for their service and their willingness to serve, to work together for creative solutions. I'd like to thank my personal assistant, Fiona, who's here, who's helping to keep me on time. I want to recognize my mother, Susan McKay, my father, Doug Johnson. I want to recognize my wife, most importantly, who is wrangling our 2 children, Selena, without whom I could absolutely not do this, so thank you. Yeah. So if they're willing, I wanted to close by inviting my children to come up and sit with me. Come on up, Joe. Come on, Alice. They can sit here. No, they don't need a chair. Come on up. Oh. I told them that they could bang the gavel, so. So there are, here, sit right here. Alice, sit. Come on. Can you sit up? Okay. You want to wave? Okay. All right.
Hi, Mommy. Hi, Mommy.
So there are a lot of reasons that I feel inspired and called to serve our city and to serve in elected office. But some of them are about these 2 guys. A lot of times when I'm working on projects, I feel a special connection because I feel like by helping to make San Carlos great, I'm helping to make their hometown even better. And lastly, as a father, I think one of your greatest goals in life is to do things that are worthy of your children's respect. And every time I face a tough vote or a difficult situation where I don't know what to do, I think about that. So, Josephine?
What?
Ellis?
What?
I want to thank you for inspiring me to serve. I am very excited to be the mayor of San Carlos, and I can't wait to get to work. And thank you. All right, and if you will do the honors, the meeting is adjourned. Hit the gavel. Very good. Ellis, can I hit the gavel? So thanks for coming tonight. Please join us for some refreshments out in the lobby. And meeting adjourned.